You found a place to belong here in the circle of friends. I'm Beth, and the room is, I don't know, there a little bit of the air has been taken out today because Dan decided that he had a life.
And didn't want to spend it with us.
And didn't want to spend it here at the table with the ladies. So, but that's all right because he can go do life. And Eric is still by our side. Missy, you're back in front of a mic, and it's Freestyle Friday, ladies. So
that means we can talk about whatever we want.
All right.
Whatever we want to talk about. So, how are you all doing after we're processing the week of learning more about Team Owolabi? Erica, you're sitting here at the table with some seasoned mamas, grandmas. You do life with a wonderful mom. What are the questions your generation is asking about life and parenting?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that we are faced as parents nowadays is just how you mentioned it briefly. I think yesterday we talked about social media and all of that, and just how do we bring our families back together again? Because social media is kind of taking us apart in a way. You know, so often Dan and I go to restaurants and we look around the room and you see families and their kids are sitting on their iPhones and they're watching a video on their tablet. And you know, when I was growing up, and it makes me feel old now too, but when I was growing up, we didn't have that. And so now parents are faced with this challenge of how do I, allow my child to have that social media presence or whatever, but also how do I keep us as a family connected?
Missy, do you have an answer for that?
Well, it is very challenging because I see, I'll tell a little story. We just drove back from vacation last week, and our twins will be 3 in October. Little boy, little girl. And my son was driving and they were in the back seat, and my daughter-in-law and my husband were following us with 2 other vehicles. And my son looked at me and said, did you hear what Gabe said, the little boy? And I said, no, I didn't catch it, because they talk all the time, the twins, they got their little conversation going, which I love. And I'm always trying to figure out what they're saying to each other. I don't always understand. But Gabe all of a sudden said, Siri, set a timer for 5 minutes. And Charlotte said, you set a timer, Gabe? And I just started laughing, and it's funny, but it's also, that's a 2-year-old kid thinking about just saying out loud to someone, set a timer. I mean, it's almost kind of beyond my comprehension as a parent, how you protect your kids. I mean, it used to be, this is our family unit. We have a TV, we have however many channels, we have control over that. You watch this, you don't watch this. There's one TV, everybody sees it. Or when my kids were growing up, the computer sat in the kitchen. That's where you were on the computer. Right. Now they hold the world in their hands, and part of that world has evil in it.
Absolutely.
How do you protect them? And yet technology is the way of the world. So they have to have understanding of it, and especially in today's world, sometimes that's the only connection to friends. Right. So it is really, really tough, I think, to figure out ways. And I think the only way you can do it is to be involved. Like you absolutely have to be involved in their lives, more so now than ever before.
Right.
And that's not, I don't mean that in a dictatorial way. I mean in a way that invites your kids to talk to you about what's going on. And I always felt like, if I don't talk to my kids when they're little, they're never going to want to talk to me when they're grown. And our kids call all the time. They used to call me a little bit more, but they don't call me so much anymore, except to say, Mom, what are you praying for me? Stop right now. They call Ned all the time for advice. They call us even as adults. And I love that. I love that. I hope that never, ever ends.
The social media aspect has made the world smaller.
Right.
And I always say it's like water and fire. Under control, it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. But out of control, it's deadly. Yeah. And we've seen that it's caused suicides. Just caused devastation and destruction in relationships. It's doing that for adults.
Right.
So what about the kids? So Erica, I would say to you, I think your generation is going to have a better handle on the social media than mine did. Okay? So our youngest is still a older teenager. He's in the last year of his teenage years. We did that whole thing where the computer screen has to be where we can see it. You know, we're very, very much about that. We kept the smartphones out of their hands until they were traveling, and I wanted some sort of GPS in their hands. So they were in high school before they had anything like that. We talked a lot about the pitfalls of what all this in your hands can bring. The kids are kids,
Right.
and they're influenced by many things. And so, yeah, we did have a season where we were struggling with the effects of the out of control. And it was. I look back and I say this was ignorance on my part. I did not realize the scope and the breadth, and I didn't comprehend how easy it was to go down a path that was dangerous. So I think that your generation is going to be more on top of that than mine was. You know, my parents never had to think about it.
Right.
Yeah.
The phone was attached to the wall, and it sat in our kitchen, and there was one in Mom and Dad's bedroom. And I think one day we sent a jack upstairs somehow, or there was a cordless phone, and all of a sudden, it's a big deal. But this is so different for our kids, and so for your kids, for our grandkids. And you're right, Missy. The little ones know how to swipe left, swipe
do.
right,
Absolutely.
take pictures.
Yeah.
Things.
It almost seems like osmosis, but it's something they're very familiar with from the time they're born. You know, I was here all week and listening to you and Dan, Erica, and I think you and Dan really have a handle on this, in that one of the things we need to do with our kids is to teach them their identity. Because a lot of kids today look to social media for that identity. So if something happens, and you know, that's where they turn to for everything that's missing in their life. And that's the danger of that, I think, is when they fill that, make that, and it even can be an addiction, I think. There are other
It
things
can be an addiction for adults.
Oh,
absolutely.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like you say, you go out in public and people are on their phones. I mean, how many people's heads are, you know, glued to their phones? Even as adults, when we get together, as our family sits there, it's like, okay, put the phones down. You know, let's just put them down. Even when you're trying to be intentional about it, it can become difficult.
I'm going to guess you and Dan have talked about this. What are your boundaries?
Right. Well, we have our biggest thing, and we had a season where Eden had a tablet, and we went on vacation, and so we always had a timer on her tablet. After 30 minutes,
Shuts
it was
down.
done. Her internet essentially shut off, and it was useless to her. And the first couple times it was a fight, and she got mad, and then eventually it just like stopped, and it was okay. She set it down and moved on. Well, we went on vacation, and it was a long drive, and so we took that timer off.
Yeah.
And we got home, and we just never got around to putting the timer back on. And suddenly we started realizing, like, there's something different about Eden, and she is not engaging as much as she used to. She's not playing as much as she used to. Then we realized she's on her tablet all the time. And so we had to revisit that. We had to go back to it. And within days of us setting that timer again, we had Eden back. And so she was young. She was 3 or 4 years old probably. And from that moment on, we realized how important it is for us to keep a handle on that. Yeah. And we have set boundaries. Clearly, they can't take it into their room and look at it and play with it. Because even though the apps that they have access to are kids' apps, you never know these days.
Right.
And then the boundaries in the car, they used to, a lot of times it's get your phone out and play with it. Well, I mentioned that Eden is very artistic. We got notebooks, just loose leaf paper notebooks and crayons, and have them in the middle of the car. And the things that they've drawn together, Aniston was always struggling. She couldn't draw what Eden could draw. And then suddenly Eden was teaching her things. And in restaurants and things, it just doesn't go there with us. But yeah, and it's the conversation we're always going to have is that you never know what you're going to stumble into. Yeah. And you said it right. Knowing who you are and knowing what you stand for before any of that happens is so important, because kids prey on that.
Yeah.
They find those kids that don't know who they are and what they stand for, and they take advantage of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you bring up a really good point. I fear for our creativity in our kids, because it's being stifled, their imagination, having to learn to play and
Right.
make up play. And I remember as a kid, we spent hours outdoors,
Right.
hours playing together, and we had to come up with our own fun kind of a thing to do. Whereas now we entertain our children instead of them finding their own sorts of entertainment or using their imagination or their creativity or anything. So anything that fosters that, I think, is a good thing for our kids today, because so much of it is going to be in their face, and teaching them to learn how much fun that is on their own and kind of draw from that, so that they are willing to kind of put the phone down, because at some point in time they're going to be old enough to make those decisions themselves. So regulating ourselves first of all, and then teaching our kids, our grandkids, this is how to make fun together. This is what you can do. And it's pointing it out when they do it. Like, that was awesome. Look what you guys did together. Look what how much fun you had. And you didn't have a tablet, or you weren't watching a show, or you weren't,
Yeah.
But it's a constant thing, I think.
Yeah. And it's harder as a parent. It's harder to teach that and to encourage your children to do that. It's much easier to give them the tablet or to turn the TV on and say, "Here you go. I've got work to do."
Right. Right.
But the reward is worth it.
Well, and part of it is, again, the state of our world. I think when I was growing up, yes, we were just outside playing, riding bike, playing wiffle ball in the street. I can remember playing Barbies on the porch, or we were town kids. We were playing. We were doing stuff together. The farm kids were working, finding their own fun, but a whole lot of work in that. My husband grew up in a family business, so he realized early on that if I'm on a sports team, I don't have to be at the family business working all the time. And so he went the route of sports.
Yeah.
And now, he loves the work of the family business. But it was a world where my parents could trust me.
Right.
Yeah.
Could trust the other people in the world.
Right.
If I was going to ride my bike to my friend's house 15 miles away.
Yeah. So much of what I did, I would never let my kids or my grandkids do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the world in which we live has changed, and I think that is part of why it becomes so much easier to hand that world in their hands, into their hands. When we come back, we want to talk about this a little bit more, and about how our role as mothers, as grandmothers, as fathers and grandfathers, as people who love the Lord, who have the truth of his word and can pour that into our kids, how that can look in setting these boundaries with the children that we so fiercely love and who we know will be the leaders of our future. We're so glad you've joined us at the table. You've found a place to belong here in the circle of friends.
In the heart of Amish country, you will find 3 wonderful, unique stores: the Village Gift Barn, Country Gatherings, and Moxie. Village Gift Barn is filled with beautiful home decor, a boutique with stylish clothing and jewelry. Country Gatherings takes a step back in time with primitive decor and a garden center. Don't forget to visit Moxie, our big city boutique with small town charm, located in the heart of Amish country. Village Gift Barn, Country Gatherings, and Moxie.
We're back here in the Circle of Friends. You're with Missy and Beth and Erica. Erica, so nice to have you here. And we miss Dan, but hey, it's okay.
She might just have to become a regular here,
Yeah, that would be awesome.
We keep talking about needing that next generation.
Yeah, some younger voices for sure. Because as we were just saying, when we raised our children, when we were raised was totally, that was way, way back in the old days, covered wagon days.
Right.
Yeah, dirt was just being discovered.
Right. It's just a different kind of a world now. And so there are a lot of things that you can bring to the table that we can't. There are challenges that you face that we never faced or even thought of. And maybe we see it now with our grandkids. But when we think about, as we were talking about, raising kids and being in this world, particularly I think in this time frame, one of my concerns for my grandkids has been this idea of fear for them, like because the adults in the world seem to be upset, fear of the unknown. There's just a lot of fear going on everywhere you look, and there's a lot of animosity. There's a lot of people are struggling to figure things out and they don't know how to do it in a way that's, probably your children have a better idea of how to have discussions than, grown-ups that they see. At least sometimes I think that way, that kids do a better job of, working things out than we do as adults. But the idea of building fearless kids without compromising their safety. I mean, what do you think about that? Is that something you kind of look at?
Yeah, that is a daily struggle. I mean, because with everything going on right now, I mean, you hear of child abductions and all this going around. I mean, every single day. So when we go into a store, my daughter wants to go ahead of me, and I have to explain to her in as honest and as simple of terms as I can, but in a way that she gets it, that there are people in this world that don't love people the way that you and I love people. And it's my job as your mother to protect you. Yeah. But then you're right. Where do you give them that freedom? We were on vacation and the restroom was down the hall from the pool that we were swimming at. And she, beginning of the week, I'd always take her. I'd go with her. And then by the end of the week, she said, I know exactly where I'm going, Mom. Can I go? And, I would have loved nothing more than to say, yes, go. But there's a lot of space between that pool and that bathroom that anything could happen and a long time would go before I would know anything happened. Right. And so what I did was I looked at her and I said, Eden, it's not you. I trust you. I know you know exactly where to go. I trust you to be responsible enough to go there and come back and have nothing go wrong. But I don't know the people around us.
Right. Yeah.
And so I would love for you to go, but for now I'm just going to have to go with you. So I think you have to give them opportunities. You have to. And lately for her, it's been she wants to go walk up and down the street by herself. And it's as simple as our street is quiet. You only go on our street because you live on our street. But it gives her that independence of I'm by myself. She doesn't have any clue that I'm standing in the window watching her every move.
Right.
But she walks tall and she walks strong as she walks up and down the street. So finding little ways to give them that opportunity to feel independent, but also then having those real discussions of, it's not you that I don't trust. It's the other people around us.
And I think the explanation is really important because a lot of times kids are going to assume.
Right.
Okay, they're going to make all kinds of assumptions. And unless you have the explanation for them, then they're going to walk away. Well, Mom
doesn't trust me.
Doesn't trust me. Well, that can blow up in a big hurry, especially if they carry that, which you have no idea what kids will carry into adulthood, right?
Oh, my. Yes, and when you realize that you didn't articulate that quite the way, or it didn't get passed along to them quite the way you thought you were articulating it, that you say, oh my, yeah, that was never how it was. We've had that happen just in the past few years, and our oldest are in their 30s. They're young women living life on their own, and I remember when you said this, Mom, and I thought that, oh my, that is not what I meant at all.
Right.
But I'm thankful that we continue to have those conversations where we can clarify those words that were misheard or just misprocessed, I guess. I come back to when we live in a fearful world, I guess, but I'm reminded in Psalms and in Proverbs that it's the fear of the Lord that's the beginning of wisdom, right? Proverbs 1:7 says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. So we have to teach our kids the proper fear of the Lord, recognizing that His word is truth, recognizing that He has given us, our parents, because it is our job to be your protector, provider, defender for this season. Right. And someday we will transition into, we won't be here to protect and provide, but God is your protector, your provider all day, every day. So I don't want our kids or grandkids to be so afraid of everything that they won't have the courage to step out and do. Right. But I do want them to recognize that we don't live in a world that fears and honors God first and foremost. So I love the way you say that. It's not you. I trust. I know that you have the ability. You can do this. I just don't know everybody that's around us right now. You'll say the same thing when they learn to drive a car.
I don't even want to talk about that right now.
You'll be repeating that for a long
I
time.
always told them, yeah, I know you see yourself as a very good driver. It's everybody else on the road that I'm worried
Right.
about, the decisions they're going to make. But that's a very real issue in this world today. And it's very easy for me to say, oh no, don't put that phone in their hands. Don't just entertain them with that video. But I was a mom who, okay, lunchtime's over, so from now, between now and nap time, you get to watch Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. I allowed the convenience of our day to entertain our children. I love that you keep a notebook and colored pencils or whatever in the car. That really is fostering resourcefulness. They can play games.
Yep.
They can draw, they can, whatever it is.
Eden's wrote books before. She's wrote just several pages worth of a story of some sort. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. My parents put up with my sister and I singing. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
We were quite the duet, just ask us. And we would sing. Our church was about 30 minutes from our home. I think we would get in the car and start singing our oh my. Anyway, as parents, I think sometimes we just want peace and quiet. And so that's why it's easy to hand that over, because they're going to watch and be quiet. But our kids need to have that voice in front of us so that we can hear what they're singing, what they're saying, what they're thinking.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess that Eden and Aniston aren't afraid to tell you what they're thinking.
They are not. Aniston more than Eden, if you believe it or not. Our 4-year-old is very. She's made me a better mom for that reason. She is one of those people. I would say Dan's not here, so he can't defend himself. But she is very much like Dan, where she wants to do what she wants to do, and if it's not what you think she should be doing, you better have a very good reason for why it's not the path that she should be going down. And as frustrating as that can be as a mom, I see so much potential in her, just because I know that she's not going to let somebody just run her over.
Right.
And Eden is a negotiator. She's a master negotiator. She will, well, if I can't do that, can I do this? Or I see I can't do that, but can I do X, Y, Z? And so they both have those qualities that can just, as a mom, drive you nuts. But at the same time, if you can take a step back from it, you can realize that that's going to help them in the long run in their life.
And I think you just hit on the key is watching your children and whatever it is that God has put in them, and draw out the potential for that. Even if it's maddening as a child, even if as a parent you get tired of trying to manage or foster that in them. So much of what we see in our kids, our grandkids, can be turned in the right direction. But that takes, Beth, what does it take?
What's that word?
That D word we hate.
That D word, delightful. Discipline. Oh, very much the same.
Yeah, same one. Same one.
Yeah. And go ahead, sorry.
Go ahead.
I think it takes calling it out in your children too, and
yes.
saying Aniston, I see that this quality in you that drives me mad some days,
Right.
but I can see you using it for this in the future, and because so many people I think have qualities in them that may be perceived as something that's not great,
Right.
but if they can use it in the right way, it can be amazing. And at that young age, teaching them how their gift, that is a gift, and even though it's maddening, it's a gift, how they can use that in the future.
Absolutely, because if you don't, all they're going to feel is the negativity of that through their, you're loud, or you talk too much, or you what. No, those things are good qualities to have. Think about when you're in a room and you need somebody to speak up, or somebody to be bold. That boldness can be used in such a great way. But again, like you said, as a mom, you have to see those things and help them, kind of steer them, not push them, not shove them, but gently help them see and help them make that decision themselves.
Right.
That's the biggest thing as a mom. For me, the hardest thing was to not make the decision, but allow them to come to the right conclusion.
Right.
Our kids have said, well, I don't know that they were talking one time, I don't know that you ever told me no. And my immediate thought was, oh, I'm a terrible mother. What did I let them do? Our kids, till they were, my oldest was 16 or 17, so the youngest was 14 or 15. They were out one night. We knew where they were. We the thing was when they got home, they would wake us up or whatever. We
Yeah.
trusted them. They were never late, never out late. And they weren't home after 11, maybe 11:30, almost midnight. And they weren't home. And we were like, oh, we called them and they said, oh, well, we just didn't want to worry you. So we were just going to stay here at our friend's house, which we knew the family. That was fine. We said, no, you're coming home. And when we got them home, they're like, why weren't you here? Why did you miss your curfew? And they looked at each other, they said, we don't have a curfew. And I can remember the panic inside of me when I looked at Ned and I mouthed to him, no curfew. Did we ever? We were looking at each other saying, we never gave them a curfew? What kind of parents are we? We never told them what time they needed to be home. It wasn't an issue. You know what I'm saying? Right. And after that, we said, okay, well, now you have one. But,
Oh, by the way.
But, a lot of times ideas would come up, especially as teenagers, but you build to that point. So when they're teenagers, oh, Mom, I want to da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And I always tried to let them say it.
Yeah.
And then help them figure, okay, you want to go to this concert. That's great. No, so, okay, it's going to cost X amount for the concert. What's it going to cost for the gas? What time will you get there? What do you got going on tomorrow? I mean, and a lot of times they kind of turned around and said, well, maybe I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And they came up with a decision themselves without just saying absolutely no. Now, there were times I did say no. I know that I did. They may not remember that, but letting them, and it's as you said, giving them that safety for Eden in those moments. Oh, I'm big enough. I could walk down the street. That is letting her fly.
Right.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
exactly what you want to do.
Yeah.
We hear so much about the strong-willed child as a negative.
Right.
But it's a positive. We don't want weak-willed children.
Right.
Right? And we don't want to be so controlling of our children that they just learn to be compliant and do what we want them to do while we're watching.
Right.
Right.
We want them to be wise.
Yeah.
We want to raise them to be good decision makers and to be safe and aware of their surroundings. And all of that, isn't that exactly what God's talking about to us about in His Word? Absolutely. He wants us to understand that He has wired us with gifts and abilities. We're all strong-willed kids. That's why we needed a Savior, right?
Right.
Because we just went ahead and forged through and did things our way. But this loving Heavenly Father who gave us boundaries and guidelines and who reminds us through His Word what is our best choice to help us live life in a way that brings Him glory and honor and praise. That's the model that we get to pass along to our own children. So I think we're at the end of our time together this week. Erica, will you come back and join us another week?
I think I would enjoy that. Yeah.
I think we
Thank
would
you for
enjoy
having me
it
today.
very much. We are so thankful for you and Dan and for young people like you who are raising up leaders in this world. I always say they'll be making our medical decisions when we're old and gray, right? So these are our future leaders. And so we just thank you for the way you are committed to this precious privilege that God has entrusted to you, this gift of parenting. Father, be with all of the parents in this world. Help them to walk worthy of the call on their lives. Most of all, help them to keep their eyes on you. Thank you for who you are, for your great love for us, and for giving each and every one of us a place to belong. Amen. This program was brought to you through the generous support of donors and listeners like you. To contact Circle of Friends Ministries, you can write to P.O. Box 345, Berlin, Ohio, 44610, or find us on Facebook at circleoffriends.fm. Program archives can be found at thelight959.com.